Hi, this is Steve Michelotti of the Azure Government Engineering team. I'm joined here today by Kevin Mack, Cloud Solution Architect at Microsoft, working with state and local governments. Welcome, Kevin.
Thanks, Steve.
So we are here today to talk about Terraform, specifically Terraform running on Azure Government.
Yep.
So why don't we start out our talk here by just talking about what is Terraform? Why do we care?
Yeah, so Terraform is a tool that really enables infrastructure as code. So this is how we provide a solution where you can manage your infrastructure, whether it be VMs, PaaS, whatever in Azure, and do it via code that can be managed, checked in, and handled to meet your organization's security and compliance needs.
Okay, so when we say code, are we talking C# kind of code, or what kind of code are we talking about?
So we're talking about the official syntax is HCL, which is HashiCorp Configuration Language. HashiCorp's the company behind it, and they've open sourced the entire product. So all of the code is open source and available.
Okay, so I'm sure you're going to show us examples of this when we get into the demo, but what is that language like? Is it more like JSON or C#, or what does it look like high level?
Great question, and yeah, it's mostly like a JSON-based language.
Okay.
So it's very easy to read, it's very user-friendly, and that's one of the selling points of Terraform is it's pretty easy to pick up and understand right out of the gate and can make developers accelerate faster with it.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right, so let's dive a little deeper. So you said that Terraform was infrastructure as code, sort of like a JSON configuration. It's starting to sound a little bit like ARM. So what are the advantages of Terraform here?
So the biggest advantage to Terraform is that it's very easy to read. It does support the idea of interpolation and a syntax that's easy to develop against. But ultimately, you can manage a multi-cloud strategy with it, as well as have a planning and execution phase. So one of the downsides of dealing with ARM directly is once you run an ARM template, it stands up the infrastructure. You don't know for sure what you're getting till you execute it. Terraform has this fantastic plan and apply step that lets you say, okay, what changes is this code going to make to my environment? I confirm that, then I run and apply, and I actually deploy the code.
That's cool. I think, I know I was definitely one of those people that when I first heard of Terraform, I'm like, we already have ARM, why do we care? But then when I first saw these features you're talking about here with the plan, I'm like, wow, that's a game changer. That's a huge differentiator. Be able to plan in advance and not, let me wait 20 minutes for this huge deployment to happen only to realize I meant to do something slightly different.
Exactly.
So that's a huge differentiator.
Exactly.
Okay. So another thing I heard you say in there was multiple cloud providers.
Yes, I did.
So talk a little more about that.
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned before, HashiCorp made all of Terraform open source. So one of the benefits of that is they actually have a provider for every major cloud. So there are providers to talk to AWS, there are providers to talk to Google, and ultimately Microsoft and the GovCloud.
Okay.
So you can build and write in the same syntax deployments for multiple clouds. So you're standardizing the interface your developers work on to handle if you do deploy to multiple clouds.
Okay, so that's huge. It's not that the exact same template would necessarily be used, but the fact that I can use the same syntax and not have to learn different syntax for each cloud I'm using, that's a huge productivity gain. So that's great.
Exactly. The other thing you can do there is using their setup for variables and interpolation, you can actually set it up so that you may have a common set of variables that works across and standardizes all of your deployments. So while they might be slightly different, you can deploy standardized templates across multiple clouds.
Okay, very cool.
Yeah.
All right, what else you got for us? So
speaking of that provider, so it's a very active code base. Specifically, the Azure provider has very frequent updates. We've gone through 18 minor versions between January and May. So it gives you a lot of great visibility into the product. Microsoft has put a lot of resources behind that. We're obviously one of the big contributors to the Azure provider.
Right.
So that really helps to solidify that this is not something that's just the next shiny object in infrastructure as code. This is something that's getting a lot of traction with the community.
Okay, so very active code base with the community, and I heard you say with Microsoft as well.
Yes, correct.
Okay, so Microsoft isn't saying, oh no, we're ARM, you're a competitor. No, Microsoft fully embracing
Absolutely,
Terraform.
Fully embracing Terraform. Yeah,
Okay.
we've done several resources around that too.
Okay.
So yeah.
All right, great.
And the other thing I would point you to is with that active community, there is a repository out there of modules pre-written. So a lot of people have written these reusable modules that they've uploaded to a registry, so you can leverage these as sort of a starting block to get you moving faster.
So it's kind of like NPM for Node or NuGet for .NET. It's just a registry where I can pull down packages.
Exactly.
In an easy way. That's awesome.
So it gives you a nice starting point.
All right, great. All right, well, is it time to maybe jump into a demo?
Yeah, absolutely. Can definitely do that. So let's go ahead and pull up a demo here. So the first thing I really wanted to show you was just to show how simple this language is and sort of how simple it is to get something going. Okay. What you're looking at on my screen here is actually Terraform script, and this is going to an Azure Government subscription. What you're seeing here is I want to go very simple with the out-of-the-box demo, and we're just creating a storage account at this point. So what you can see looking down the code is I've identified the subscription. I put in code to say this is my resource group. Here's my storage account. And I want to actually create a container inside that storage account, which is something you can't do with ARM. But you can do with Terraform. From here, really the process of getting this working, this is just a TF file, is to run a Terraform init to get Terraform to download the latest providers. So what you're going to see here is that it will go out and update the provider so that you can get the latest versions of Terraform. But then if I go ahead and run a Terraform plan here, what you're going to get is a plan that shows exactly, this is what I was talking about before, about how if I go down and scroll through this, you can see exactly what it's going to create. It's going to create a resource group, it's going to create an account, and then it's going to create a container. And where this gets really interesting for Terraform is the fact that it's doing a graph based on what you put in. So it's identifying the dependencies it needs and putting them in the correct order so that when it runs the deployment, it runs it in a way that's efficient and there's no, oops, I didn't create the account before I tried to create the container.
Yeah. That plan feature is awesome. I mean, you can see just in a few seconds what's about to happen. And again, you don't have to wait for a few minutes to realize, oh, I have this one line of code out of place. And even looking at the code you showed there, it's interesting because it sort of looks like JavaScript / JSON, very easy to read. I can see that I've got variables, as you pointed out. So very user-friendly.
Yep. And then from there, it's just running a Terraform apply.
And that's the thing that actually does the work.
Yep, that's going to actually push the work. So what we're going to see here in a second is it's going to bring back up the plan, and this is another nice step of, I call this the safety check. Yep. I go and run the plan. It says, all right, just to be clear, this is what I'm going to do to your environment. Are you okay with that? Yes.
Okay. And then it'll actually go off and deploy.
Yep, so then it's going to go off and actually create all the resources attached. So, and as you can see, one thing worth noting here is in the readout, it is hiding things like keys that it creates and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
So there we go. It created now the storage account and it created a container within it. So if I hop over to our Azure portal over here, you'll see that there's my storage account that I created. And if I go and actually pull that up, we'll see that there is actually a container sitting in the blobs as specified.
Okay, so we have a storage account created in Azure Government and also the container, as you mentioned. Awesome.
Exactly.
Okay, great.
So the one thing worth mentioning, too, here while we're looking at code is I don't want anyone to walk away with the impression that it's only basic services or it's only VMs that can be out here. So you have the ability with Terraform to spin up PaaS services as well. Okay. And you can get really interesting with this.
And we even have like side-by-side comparison between Terraform template and an ARM template.
Yeah, I can actually show that right here. So if we wanted to look at, for example, here's an ARM template. This is an ARM template of a single VM that is single VM and the networking in a public endpoint. So as you can see, this is the JSON-based template we're all used to.
Pretty standard ARM stuff.
Yeah, pretty standard ARM stuff. If we look at the overall length, just for a sec, I want to call that out, 349 lines of code to generate a single VM with networking. If I go to do the exact same thing in Terraform, what we end up with is this. Very readable, very easy to follow, and total number of lines is 147.
So I'm less than half the number.
Yeah, less than half to create the same thing.
Very cool.
So nice and easy to follow and easy to manage. So then, as I mentioned, the other part we wanted to talk about is the fact that we can deploy PaaS solutions out here, right? So PaaS solutions, basically, again, it's the same Terraform. We don't see a lot of differences in the overall syntax, but we can call out resources such as an app service plan or an app service. And one of the things I want to point out is we can actually create dependencies between these. So as you'll notice further down here, I actually create a random database password, a SQL server, and a SQL database. And then I go up and tell my app settings as part of this, hey, use the server name from the server you just created, use the database name, use the login and the password that I just
You can reference those variables.
I can reference those same variables. And then when I run this, the great part is that I can actually, so if we back down here, if I pull up this resource group.
So this is the Martha Stewart quick bake oven kind of thing?
Yeah, yeah. So we did a Martha Stewart quick bake. We're going to pull it out of the oven here. And what we ended up with is the SQL server and the database, the app service plan and the app service. And if I actually go into the configuration here and pull this up, I can say, show me the values attached to this database string. As you can see, it added it. And if I say edit, you can actually see it put the server name in of the newly created server, the database, deploy in 10 SQL Server, and a user ID and the randomly generated password.
Which is just generated on the fly.
Exactly. So from a DevOps perspective, this is huge because we can get to a place where no human hands actually created a password. It just deployed it straight to the cloud.
And you could even put the password in Key Vault, for example.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. You could randomly generate it and then put it in Key Vault.
Absolutely. So the takeaway here is you showed the initial example, simple storage account. You showed another example, the VM. But the example you just showed here was you could have a full deployment where you have a database and a website and you have interdependencies on those things, which you showed right here in this particular resource group.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've seen a great demo here. How does someone actually get started with this?
So there's a couple ways to do it, but the big thing is getting your environment set up on your machine to support Terraform. And the easiest way to do that, we actually have a blog post that I'll walk you through step by step how to set up your machine so that you can use VS Code and the extensions supported in VS Code for Terraform to work directly with these tools. We also have a marketplace image in Azure that is based around Terraform so that you can do Terraform development. And Terraform is supported in the Cloud Shell, which I know is not in government now, but it is in commercial and is coming. So we can always work with Terraform directly there. As our Corey Sanders, VP for Azure, had a blog post talking about how deeply invested Microsoft is in Terraform. So next up is really talking about how you can get started if you already have resources in the cloud.
Okay.
That's really the next point. So let's say I have a full environment in Terraform, or in the Azure cloud, and I want to be able to use Terraform to manage that environment.
So that existing infrastructure.
That existing infrastructure. The answer is there's actually a tool out there called AZ2TF that will actually crawl your Azure subscription and build the appropriate Terraform.
Like reverse engineer it.
Yes,
Okay,
or
very
reverse engineer it so you can have your own Terraform script to start with.
Okay.
There are a few subtle tweaks that have to be made to the tool. It is open source on GitHub to make it work with Azure Government. I have a blog post in the initial resources about how to do that.
All right, we'll put that blog post in the show notes.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. So that's really all it takes to get started is some configuration of your machine and off to the races.
Great. Okay, any other resources we should be aware of?
So yeah, there are a few more resources just to let you know about. There's a great walkthrough by HashiCorp on their site of how to support Terraform and how to work with it. As I mentioned, the blog post about configuring your dev environment and then AZ2TF.
Okay. All right, great. And like I said, we'll put those links in the show notes as well.
Absolutely.
All right, great. All right, well, this has been Steve Michelotti talking with Kevin Mack about using Terraform in Azure Government. Thanks for watching.